How are you doing, everybody? Welcome to Behind the Bet. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. I'm joined with Calvin Smith, who you've seen before here on the show. Behind the Bet is powered by wagerwire.com. So check us out at wagerwire.com. Download the app, sync your books, bet value calculator, all that good stuff at WagerWire. But, first things first, Calvin, how are you doing today? And thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you, Kevin. Glad to be back on here. I know we chatted a couple months ago, so we've had a couple games under our belt, and obviously you and I have connected through the last few months up until today, and excited to kind of dive a little bit further into it and talk through it.
Just for those who may not remember or are new to the show, Calvin has a three-leg parlay, which included Tennessee baseball winning the College World Series. Check, done,
Yep.
cash. Then you also had Scotty Scheffler winning a PGA event.
Yep.
That was taken care of too. And then the last leg here is the Ohio State Buckeyes winning the national championship. Ohio State has the best odds out there according to the books. But we're talking about a bet, running over a pretty long-term period of time, and probably going to have some twists and turns, even though we haven't had it here in the first three games for Ohio State in the non-conference, really just kind of going through and in a very workmanlike effort, taking care of things.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I saw it was actually an Ohio State fan on Twitter that had mentioned and called Ohio State the MAC champs. And so, it's they've done what they should have done. But, like you said, I think that we're over the span of the next 6 weeks, we're going to get a lot more insight into is Ohio State who we really think they are, and obviously some obstacles that you'll always face going on the road and playing in big-time college football.
Now, obviously, you can't be successful at sports betting if you don't know a thing or two about sports. I mean, yes, you can go into your office pool and Martha from HR is going to win your office pool because she likes mascots or she likes colors, but that's not necessarily the case here. So, we're 3 games into the season. You brought up that they're MAC champions, But I mean, what are your feelings about this team? I mean, obviously now you are a bit of a stakeholder in some ways, because as Ohio State goes, this wager goes.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I really treat it like kind of through this. And I knew that strategically playing it out. At the end of the day, January 20th is what matters. But understanding, the cash out consistently moving and those type of things. When I placed that bet, I think at that time they had the second highest odds. And I had firm belief at some point during the season they would jump to number 1. And here we are, after the Kentucky week is when they jumped. When Georgia played Kentucky. So as a whole, I think Ohio State's exactly what I thought. They're extremely explosive offensively. Defensively, they can fly around. Secondary's elite. Still figuring out kind of the linebacker position, plugging guys in and out. Defensive line has the talent. And I think you'll agree with this. You and I talked about this. You're just not seeing, and I don't think we've seen a ton of who they really are, what formations and what they've shown us so far, just because of their talent level comparative to the competition. So I'm excited, heading out to East Lansing this week and seeing, what Chip throws out or what we kind of see, and maybe new schemes or, defensive fronts, all those type of things that we've pretty much, I feel like, seen just the base. And so you kind of get to see creativity here, and I'm intrigued to see that and excited to see that moving forward.
Do you have any game day rituals when you sit there and have action on a team, whether it be this big bet with Ohio State or maybe some other things of how you go about and watch the games? I mean, do you have like a man cave and it's like nobody's allowed in the man cave when dad's working? Or, I mean, how does that work out?
Yeah, so I have 2 little ones, both one's 1-year-old, one's 2.5. So it's kind of me juggling a little bit. My wife's super helpful. She's awesome. She's a rock star. But I'm definitely like in between, commercials or half, like taking my little man out and we'll go outside and play for a few minutes. But I still am pretty constantly, dove into the game. I mean, that Saturday is arguably right now the biggest day of the week for me. And so my wife's super understanding of that. And I'm pretty dialed in. The ritual so far has been I'll throw on my Ohio State gear regardless of me having wagers on other teams, because at the end of the day, Ohio State's my team this year, and I'll throw my gear on. Living in Knoxville, when we go out and I got Ohio State gear on, I probably get some looks because it's Vol country, and rightfully so. But for me, like we said, Ohio State's my team, and so I'll throw the gear on, and then I'm dove in from noon till I know we don't have Pac-12 midnight now, but there's still some late games, and I'm pretty much dove in throughout the rest of the day to college football and checking scores and those type of things.
A lot of fans, when they make bets, I mean, it's real short term. Hey, it's Friday night. I better get my action in for Saturday. But how maddening is it to have a bet that spans 8, 9, 10 months or whatever to finally get a verdict? Because it's like the money's there. They're making interest on it. It's out of your account or whatever. I mean, how difficult is that? I mean, I've made plenty of future bets in the past and understand, but my future bets are for like $10. I mean, we're not talking about something, a big chunk of change.
Yeah. I think it's pretty it's an emotional roller coaster. I mean, full transparency, you watch game to game and you really kind of continue to form your opinion of what a team looks like. But you also have to realize, we look at this Georgia team, for example, back to Kentucky. Every single year, the past couple of years, they've had that first road game that they go on. They tend to struggle, and then Kirby seems to light a spark, and they figure it out. And so watching the Marshall game, and, I saw Ryan Day and Jim Knowles talk about it, I don't think they were very pleased with the defensive effort giving up 2 touchdowns in the first half. And me as a fan, I was not pleased with that either. And so I was glad to know, I saw the Ryan Day quote, and I don't know exactly how it went, but he just mentioned he's not pleased with anything because there's nothing to be pleased about. And so I think, the standard he has for this team and every piece that they've brought back, got from the portal, new incomers like Jeremiah Smith, all put together, he understands his expectation is excellence and absolute domination on the field. And I don't think he was pleased with the defensive effort that we saw. And honestly, I had some worry watching some of those drives myself, not getting off the field on third down, all those type of things. So all that to say, it's a bit of a roller coaster week to week. If they go out to Eugene and win by 10 plus, we're sitting here saying there's no shot I'm cashing out. This is their year. So I'm excited to see how it shakes out. I mean, I still have full belief that this is the best team in the country, best roster in the country. And like we've said, I love the addition of Chip Kelly to the offense. So feeling really good where we're at, but obviously, you grow as a team and excited to see what that looks like moving forward.
And this leads perfectly into my next question here. You're watching college football in general. What do you think are the biggest challenges to Ohio State this year? I mean, obviously, just talked about the Marshall game. Maybe the defense wasn't necessarily up to snuff. It seemed like a pretty vanilla defensive call that was there. I mean, there wasn't a lot of exotic blitzing or whatever, because you really didn't need to do that against Marshall. And it's Stone Earl, his quarterback, was a 44% completion percentage. I mean, he looked a little bit better than that against Ohio State. But what do you think presents the biggest challenges for this team, and by extension you, since again you've got skin in the game?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is the new format with the college football playoff and understanding you have for sure another game guaranteed, even if you are the 1 through 4 seed. But you potentially, if you're not, you have 2 more games to even get to where it was last year. And understanding, of course, you do have a little bit more leeway with losing a game and you still getting in. And, that was kind of the big question mark previously. But from week to week, I think the biggest thing is understanding for Ohio State, they have so many weapons. And I was listening to a podcast. It's and this, you've seen it with the NIL landscape, is all these guys, are valuable and have an asset that their name is tied to now with their social media presence and all these things. And so I think being able to keep the locker room, close and understanding, they're all in this for one goal, and that's to win a national championship. And, money starts getting involved. You have a running back duo that's the best in the country that both could probably go anywhere else and get 25 carries a game. Receivers like Ibuka, who's been there for several years, and then Jeremiah Smith is now starting to get a lot of the spotlight. And so I think the biggest thing is the camaraderie and the one goal in mind of keeping the national championship inside and everything we do is to get there. So from inside the locker room, I think that's the biggest thing. Outside, I think it's just taking it week by week, and they have so much noise in their ear. They see they're the national championship favorites, and you've seen it. I mean, look at Notre Dame. Each week, Ohio State's going to get the best that every single team has to offer, and being nearsighted and understanding you got to win each and every game, and it's one game at a time, and not seeing, not necessarily looking ahead or having a letdown spot that you shouldn't have. So that from looking at the team itself, I would say those are the two biggest things in my opinion.
Is there anything that you've seen out there that has caught your eye to move on in CFB? I mean, obviously you have this Ohio State bet, but there are a lot of games going on. I mean,
yeah,
you're in Knoxville, Tennessee certainly is looking like a real team. I mean, we're coming up to a hell of a couple of weeks in the SEC with some of these games.
Yeah, 100%. I know you and I talked about it, and we just talked, do I have any other wagers out there for hedge? I've actually had some deposit matches from some books and have placed 2 other national championship winners. None of my own money, like I did wager on Ohio State, but I just know strategically, I looked at schedules where I thought I could possibly buy at the highest spot. So watching that post Michigan Texas game, I thought Texas looked really good. I'm still not sold. Michigan's a very good football team, but Texas looked really good. Obviously, Quinn has a lot of experience. He was in the playoffs last year. So I did buy some stock on them to win the national championship. And then before the season, like I told you in our first podcast, Oregon was one of my biggest concerns, and obviously they're a Big Ten contender as well. So prior to the season, I had a free bet, and I placed Oregon to win the national championship. Haven't placed anything on Georgia. I probably got some question marks and some looks there. But I just think they have a gauntlet of a schedule, and I'm intrigued to see what they look like moving forward down this 4-game stretch. That's an absolute gauntlet. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think there's obviously a slew of good teams, but at the end of the day, I'm still sold. There's 3 or 4 teams, in my opinion, that are national championship contenders, and obviously Ohio State's still my favorite to do that.
I'll get to the SEC in a second, but you were talking about Oregon, and obviously October 12th for Ohio State being this, major clash.
Yep.
Oregon has not been super impressive up until the second half of the Oregon State game.
Yep.
Have they done anything to change maybe your view of them as we're like in real time, or it's just it's hard to shake the rust off from an off season and everything else, and that what we saw in the second half against Oregon State is really much more indicative of what we should expect from Dan Lanning's crew.
Yeah, for sure. I think Oregon, obviously they had some key portal ads, and anytime you're bringing guys in from another, school and the way things were ran, and you're having to mold that into your own program and what you've built, obviously there's some, maybe some learning curves to be had. Obviously, Gabriel coming from outside of Oregon, from Oklahoma, making that jump in transition, winning the team over, that's always going to take some molding and some time. My biggest concern for Oregon is their front 7 on the defensive side and their offensive line. I was looking statistically, I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think through the first 3 games, they gave up more sacks than they did the previous year last year. And that's with Idaho, Boise State, and Oregon State. And so, you see that and you understand, the biggest difference between the cream of the crop and, G5, in my opinion, is the offense and defensive line. And so when I see that, and then I see what Ohio State has on the defensive line, obviously that for me as a fan, I'm bullish on Ohio State, but there's definitely concern there. And then I know Boise State ran for 200 plus yards, I believe it was, on Oregon, and pretty much lined up and said, we're going to keep running at you because you can't stop us. So I'm intrigued to see, Dan Lanning's a defensive guy, what he can figures out with, schemes, or what he wants to do with moving guys around to different spots, or filling what that defense looks like. But that's kind of been my take on Oregon thus far. Is obviously they have skill guys, and Dylan Gabriel's a great quarterback, but what's their game plan moving forward with the offense and defensive line?
Going to go to a viewer question here or comment. Imagine paying to watch a game on Peacock when I could just watch the UGA Bama game instead. I'm a sick man. What are your thoughts about some of these games getting shipped off to streaming only outlets and wow, they really did something with the night games and everything else. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously you've got the Bama Georgia game. Obviously you've got Ohio State playing Michigan State. I think Penn State Illinois is at night as
Yeah.
well. I mean,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that as a consumer?
Yeah. I think it's kind of got out of hand, honestly. I saw, obviously this is an NFL, but I think I saw to watch every single NFL game this year, your total cost was going to be like $700, which is just crazy. And I think it ultimately takes away, this is a money driven area, just like anything else is. It's a business, and I understand that aspect of it. But, all these streaming services and having to subscribe to this and that just to watch a singular game that you're interested in honestly feels kind of, like a disadvantage to true fans for a specific team. And so I'd love if they could find a one-stop shop to watch every single game and create a bundle that makes sense and is affordable to most people. But you and I both know I don't see that happening, just understanding the landscape and, it being a money-driven sport.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to get there. I mean, obviously there was like a Warner Brothers Discovery,
Yeah.
ESPN, and Fox were trying to come together
Yeah.
with a service, and it was going to be quite costly because I don't think people realize just the percentage in their cable bill or satellite bill or however you ingest it.
Yeah.
So much of it is to these main things. ESPN is by far the most expensive channel
Yeah.
that there is in terms of carriage rights, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is great. Our conference, we're going to be making $100 million a year per
Of course.
team." Well, that
Yeah.
money's got to come from somewhere. That's just not
Yeah.
coming. It ain't charity.
Yeah. Right. 100%. I think, from a sports betting side, it makes it pretty tough because you can't, like, you have a smart TV, but you can only be on one side at once. So whereas I go on YouTube TV and I can have a four game going on at once through the split screen. Well, if I go to Peacock and want to watch the Buckeyes, that's the only game I can watch unless I'm on on my computer or got my phone pulled up with another game. So I think that makes it a challenging aspect of you having to flip back and forth through games. Obviously, I'm going to have other bets going on through the season, but I'm still watching Ohio State play every week. So that being my top priority, regardless of who they're playing, does make it a little bit challenging.
Sage Ohio says, I won't be switching channels. I'll be on the Buckeyes. Too hard to switch streaming channels. Exactly the point there. I mean, you
Yeah.
got, like, tonight's going to be an example, and then I'll get to the question that I have loaded up. You've got the collegiate game. You've got the NFL game on Prime. So it's how are you going to maneuver that? I mean, I don't care unless you have a multiplex setup in your home, like a bar. You're going to, or just multiple TVs. And I was
Yeah.
never allowed to have a second TV in the living room. I was told that was terrible and that would lead to impending doom if I ever did it. So I never did it.
Yeah.
But let's get here to if you are betting the UGA Bama game, what's the play? Knowing you're just one person and not offering a tip sheet. So I want to predicate this by anybody who's watching this live or on replay. This is not a tip sheet. This is not saying I guarantee it. This is my master lock of the week. This is just one man saying how he feels about this game.
Yeah. I've actually had conversations throughout the whole week with buddies. I have a couple buddies that are Georgia fans. I think it's going to be a great game. If I had to take a side, and I'm literally flipping from my take this morning, but I think the more I've thought about it, I'm going to ride with the Bulldogs in Georgia. I don't think there's any doubt Kirby Smart right now is the best college football coach in the country. With Nick Saban leaving, I think he's the guy. He's proven that. He's always seemed, coming off a bye week, to be able to rally his team. Obviously, people are now kind of sleeping on him a little bit after the Kentucky. They snuck by and found a way to pull it out, but didn't look very good. And I think he's just a defensive mind. Is going to be able to really scheme and understand how to contain Jalen Milroe. And when you do that, I'm not sure how explosive or how dynamic Alabama's offense is. I know obviously they have Ryan Williams, the true freshman, 17 years old, and what he's done is incredible. But Georgia's got an elite secondary too, and those guys are experienced. They got 3 guys coming back off the injured their injury list that are going to play in this game. So I would lean Georgia with the points -2.5.
The game's at Alabama. I think I'm leaning in the other direction just
Yeah,
because it's one of these things that Bama is Bama, and I understand Nick Saban isn't there anymore,
yeah,
and I can't get the images of the Kentucky game out of my mind. You brought up a very good point about how Georgia does seem to struggle against its first real road foe,
yep,
and you may be proven right there. I mean, I think you watch trends a hell of a lot more than I do. I'm more built up into the emotion and the moment of it, and
yeah,
I don't know if I'm necessarily buying. I think that I'm saying I'm going to take Bama, but then
yeah,
everything with Milrow, he's the short passing is great, the deep passing is great, everything in the middle is not with
yep,
him, and
yep.
I just don't know. I'm not sold on Carson Beck as being the top quarterback,
I'm
not
not
only in
either.
the nation, but not in the conference. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that Jackson Dart has shown me more than Carson Beck has.
yep, yep. I got a Jackson Dart favorite Heisman play that I'm riding personally. So that's my guy. I'm rooting for him. But I 100% agree. If you gave me the two, I'm taking Jackson Dart all day. I think he's an absolute gamer. Plays with a chip on his shoulder, and like you said, I know Carson Beck, and he's been great. But you look at the odds to go number one overall next year, and he's a massive favorite. And I'm not sure I've seen that just watching what I've saw, but I'm intrigued to see how that shakes out, and I think it's going to be a great game. Obviously, you got two historical powerhouses, head to head, and a lot of implications on the line.
You have not taken the road of being invisible on social media with this. You're known as having the big Ohio State bet and everything else. Do people reach out to you thinking that they can maybe get tips off of you in terms of, well, I mean, if you're doing it, let me see if I can get some of that mojo rubbed off on me or whatever,
Yeah.
or do people leave you be?
Um, I pretty much only really chop it up with my close friends. We do have me and my best friend. We have a sports betting group that we started. It really at first it was a free Discord or Telegram that we started. We got up like pretty fast, about 300 members, and it got pretty like guys who would just join a week ago. We would go 1-1, and basically it'd be a wash, and you would get people like making comments. And I mean, I understand it, but like you always got to zoom out and see the big picture and see what your ROI looks like, having been here for a substantial amount of time. So just the amount of time we were putting in and the effort was truly, I mean, we were putting in 15 to 20 hours a week doing research, diving into it, and to do it for free and then get that stuff. We're going to go to a super cheap, but like see who truly wants to be a part of it type of membership. So we now have a Discord, and we charge like $20 a month and send out all of our plays. Everything's tracked, and we've had historical data now for a year and a half doing it, and had great success. So that's pretty much where we rock and roll. And we always advise people who want to come. I mean, a lot of these paid, professional sports bettors per se, want to charge you $199, $299 a month. And we're really just doing it because, I mean, we are putting in valuable time that we could be doing something else. But at the end of the day, we want to help people, see people win, and take it very seriously. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But I do have some buddies text me or make jabs at Ohio State, just jokingly, especially being in SEC country. But I think that's all going to play out how I think it will as well. So
Let's take a little bit of a turn away from college sports. We're 3 weeks into the NFL season, and there've been a lot of surprising results.
yeah,
The Circa Challenge, like their Survivor Challenge. I mean, they're down to like 600 entries, 630 or something like that. It's just not been a very predictable
not at
product
all.
so far. What are your biggest takeaways so far in the young NFL season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I bet week 1 and week 2, and I honestly didn't bet this past week just from the standpoint. I mean, there's been no rhyme or reason to anything that's happened. I mean, you look on paper, you look at line movement, you look at betting splits, and nothing is really telling anything at all. I mean, I saw, for example, on Monday, the sharps per se, the professional bettor has been doing it a long time. We're all over Jacksonville plus 5.5, and we saw how that shook out. So for me, I think, and you're seeing it a little bit more in college, and I went on Twitter and I've made several remarks, but they're with the roughing the passer, the targeting, all these calls are truly impacting games and are completely uncappable, meaning that, you and I don't know what their thought is on a targeting call. I mean, there's no like set boundaries. I know they have their rules, but you see a call that is blatantly targeting and doesn't get called. And then you see one that dude's just making a football play and you get the flag, and that can completely change the game. So, especially in the NFL, it's been tough to get a feel for me. And honestly, I haven't had one, and I've dabbled in NFL, but I've not bet it near to the extent that I have college football, just because I watch. I'm more passionate about college football, but NFL's been a bit of a circus. I mean, I think the Chiefs and Bills have looked really good. Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are two guys you can pretty much rely on. So other than that, I'm excited to see how it shakes out. And, the Chiefs have looked really good with, they seem to just plug and play and figure it out. And obviously, they're trying to do the three-peat. So I'm intrigued to see, kind of following that through the year, how they go. They got a couple injuries and excited to see that moving forward.
Is it uncommon for you to sit out a week? You said that you're much more college than NFL, and I know a lot of guys like that. I mean, the television ratings say that in the world, the United States is more NFL than college.
Right. Yep.
I'm all college. I mean,
Yep.
I will watch the NFL because
Right.
it's football, and we only have so many weekends of the
Yeah.
year where we get football.
Yeah.
But is it uncommon for you to sit out a week on something like that? I mean, obviously, you've got to look at this as what kind of investment you're making and everything else. And if you don't feel like any of the product is necessarily moving you and that you've got a strong feeling,
Yeah.
why are you doing it? Habit?
Yeah, for sure. And, that's what a lot of, we talked about it, at the moment. I mean, I'm full-time sports betting, been doing it now for 7 months. And so, I got to be pretty strategic and understanding, if I don't have a strong feel, I'm not just going to throw a bet in to throw a bet in. And there's people who do that, and, you may win, but also if I have a great Saturday with a college slate, do I really want to risk giving that back on who knows what can happen in the NFL? So I kind of treat it, if I have a strong college weekend, and my wife is saw me sit my butt on the couch and not help with the kids or around the house from 12 to 11 the previous day, I may check some scores, but I'll absolutely pass. And, I think, I mean, I'm intrigued to see how it plays out. I won't play anything on the NFL tonight. And, it just seems like there's been no rhyme or reason anything in betting. That's not something I feel comfortable putting my money on.
I wish I could say with great conviction to bet on the Cowboys, but I can't because, I mean, hell, the NFC East is a total mess with Washington being the only team that seems to have a pulse. And it, again, shows you what happens when you get a quarterback in Jaden Daniels who's able to do something. And, the other three teams, just a mess. I mean, so who knows? Who knows? But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, 1,000% agree. It's, it'll be interesting. The Vikings were the most bet team in the NFL for their under team wins, and what they're 3-0 now. And that just goes to show you. I mean, nothing has seemed to go the way it should, and so that makes it a tough sport to bet at the moment.
We were talking before we hit live to go live on the show about Major League Baseball, and the postseason is rapidly approaching. We're in the final week of the regular season. I'm a Dodgers fan. I would assume in Knoxville, Braves fan, maybe.
If I had to have a team, my family's from Cincinnati.
Okay.
So the Reds, but there's not much to cheer for there. I follow the MLB a little bit, much more college baseball. Obviously, being invested with some friends that have played and having the Vols this year, per se. But I will say that my biggest guy this year has been Paul Skeens. I do have a futures riding on him to win NL Rookie of the Year, and there's been drastic controversy and line movement throughout the last 2 months that I've not seen in any other any other bet, honestly, I've ever taken. So, we're about to wrap that up. That voting ends at the end of the regular season. So, hopefully he comes through, but I'm excited to see kind of how that shakes out.
Yeah, I would have figured, 2 months ago. I mean, it just, start engraving the trophy and everything else. So
Yeah.
I don't know there, but we're getting close to the playoffs,
Yeah.
and again, we're not MLB is not going to produce a 100 game winner, game winning team.
Yep.
So it's maybe there's a little bit more parity there. I mean, obviously they're your teams, and then there's the White Sox who are in their own little world. But I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
who do you like in terms of what may come out of the playoffs? I mean, let's just who do you like in the NL and who do you like in the AL, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Again, I mean, this is no advice because I don't follow the sport extremely close. But having spoke with some buddies, I think my NL pick would be I like the Phillies a lot. I just kind of like the way they play. Obviously, they have a ton of all stars, a good rotation. So that would be my take from the NL. AL, I would likely say, I do worry about their pitching staff a little bit, but I think the Yankees obviously having Judge and all those guys, Juan Soto and all those big guys that can truly change the game in a swing. I know that's kind of a cliche, like they're two of the favorites, outside of the Dodgers, but those would probably be my two picks if I gun to my head had to pick.
I think I agree as well. The Dodgers are my team, but we're to the point where Calvin and I are going to be pitching for them. They just can't keep any pitchers healthy whatsoever. I mean, it's great to have Shohei Ohtani. People have brought up, well, maybe he could at least come in out of the bullpen and pitch in the playoffs, but
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's going to matter at this point. I don't know if a team necessarily is going to run a bullpen game in the playoffs. If there's one that's going to have to do it, it might be the Dodgers, just because everybody and their uncle is injured. And
Yeah.
then on the AL side, it's just so hard to pick against the Yankees.
Yeah.
It just really is. I mean, they just have so much offense, but we'll get them into a short series, and you don't know what may happen there at that point. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's part of what makes Major League Baseball's postseason so fun to watch. Is it the NHL postseason? No, the NHL postseason is by far the best postseason, in my opinion,
Yeah.
in terms of just the immediacy and everything else. But we'll. I mean, we're just season ends on Sunday. Season ends
Yeah.
on Sunday, and then we're immediately unless you're the Braves and the Mets, who
Yeah.
might have to play a doubleheader on Monday because of the weather that is
Right.
coming up through the Gulf. So anybody who is in, what is the name of the storm? Helene or
Oh,
something?
yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. Be careful. Be careful. Prayers up. Be safe. Don't try to ride out a storm in a bad position. Material goods can be replaced. Lives can't.
Yeah. I saw some interesting, just showing how powerful it could be. So we're getting a ton of rain in East Tennessee from that. So, yeah, it looks like it's going to be hit pretty hard.
Uh, Back to the bet and needing Ohio State to win. And we kind of talked about this a little bit here, but how do you handle your game watch for that? I mean, I understand, with the kiddos, halftime is family time, and then you got to get back into it and everything else. I mean, do you find yourself second guessing Ryan Day and Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles, and additionally, how much do you really feel like, okay, Ohio State, maybe you've got the family in Cincinnati, so Ohio State's
Yeah.
not been a team completely off your radar,
Oh,
but
no, yeah.
now being completely, focused on them. I mean, you can watch other games. I mean, how is that all put together?
Yeah. I to answer your Ryan Day question, you see on social media more than anything the Ryan Day hate and the slander and all those type of things. I think he's a great coach. Look at his winning record. I know, everybody loves to base it off what he's done against Michigan, and that rightfully so. I understand he last year was, they were a drive away. The year before that, obviously, I think they should have won that game and they didn't. But as each year is such a new year. Ryan Day has done a great job building this team out, bringing in Chip Kelly, having some big portal additions, and so. I personally don't have any second guesses. I'm excited to see, the offense get opened up more, the new defensive schemes. Having played, Division I college football, I think I watch the games a little bit different than someone who didn't do that and understand. A lot of times if you go to a game, you'll have a random lady in the stands, saying they should blitz more, or something like that. And so, I think I watch it more from like when I played and understanding, schemes and all those type of things and get pretty analytical with it. But you look at, Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles' resume. I mean, they're both in the top 5 in the country from the coordinator position. And so, and obviously Ryan Day, trusted giving Chip Kelly that role and taking it out of his own hands. And I think that's going to even make him much, much more involved in just understanding, clock management, all the key decisions that go into totally outside of calling plays. I'm excited to see how that shakes out. I know you and I talked about it. We're about to get into a 5 to 6 week stretch here. I know there's a bye week involved there, but we're going to learn out a lot of who Ohio State is. And, I know on paper we can say they're the most talented team in the country, which I think they are, but you got to go on the field and show it each and every week. And so you got the guys that came back, when they likely could have got drafted and have that leadership. They've been in big games. So, now it's time to go prove it and make a stand for Ohio State and prove, the haters and the doubters wrong.
I don't know if we've ever talked about, at least on air, your past of playing football. So can you share a little bit of your experience with that? What position did you play? How did that go? I mean, what and maybe what you learned from that now fits into your current life of being, a professional gambler.
Yeah. So just a quick rundown. I played safety. Actually grew up playing quarterback, but transferred or switched over to safety in high school. Signed with Coastal Carolina in 2016. Spent a couple years there, and actually had an opportunity. I got school paid for. Had a great job opportunity in medical device sales that I was previously in. And knew the NFL wasn't on. I'm not Caleb Downs, so knew the NFL was not on my horizon, and decided, I was healthy, got school paid for. I'm gonna go, try and make some money now. So looking back, that was right before COVID, so I could have played for another 3 years, and I'm sure that would have been pretty good. Coastal had a couple years there where they went on a really good run and won a lot of games. So that would have been cool, the experience. But I'm thankful for how it shook out. Opportunity to get school paid for and really meet some guys that are now in the league and obviously just learn more about the game of football. And I think that approach, really understands. And sometimes, I watch this and you see coordinators on games that you've got to bet on, and you're just like, I'm not even a coach, and I understand, like, why are we running this? And I'm sure, fans do that all the time. And there's a lot of more that goes into it than just seeing what the plays ran on the screen. But I think it's allowed me to have a perspective on understanding game flow, and you can kind of get a feel, which team, like a lot of teams are just watching where the ball's going. Well, I like to watch what's the line of scrimmage look like and who's controlling that, and really looking more analytical and one-on-one matchups on the outside and those type of things. On even though that doesn't happen, that play, is that something that they're obviously seeing in the booth that they may come back to later in the game and, can potentially change the outcome of the game. So that's kind of how I take my approach. And I feel like it's really allowed me to have a really good feel and understanding of game flow and how I feel like teams, even though the score may not be reflective over the time of the game, where I think that's going to end up playing out.
A lot of people make the assumption that Coastal is in Myrtle Beach. It's in Conway. It's close to Myrtle Beach. How much time did you spend in Myrtle?
In the summer, we had summer workouts. So our summer workouts would be like 6 a.m. We'd get done at 7:38. And we had the rest of the day. We all had an online like arts class or something. So I went to the beach a decent amount in the summer. It's pretty packed there. And it was probably like a 30-minute drive. So went a decent amount then. Obviously in season, we're not going to the beach. And then in the spring, we may go a weekend or two, but nothing drastic. They're saying ball at the beach. That's kind of their cliche, like, come play at the beach. Not necessarily the beach. I would argue FAU is probably more of that slang, but it's a good selling point, and I will absolutely say there's probably some dudes that have committed there solely to think that they're going to play at the beach. So.
Yeah, exactly. If Pepperdine had a football team, they could do that as well. And that's where I was going to go to Pepperdine, but that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. Now, What has surprised you the most about this college football season to date? And then I'll split this question into two. But
Yeah.
there have been obviously, and I think people could talk about FSU's struggles. Maybe that wasn't necessarily a surprise, knowing Jordan Travis was gone, and that maybe they hadn't made any wholesale changes. So what has surprised you the most?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me, and it's not even necessarily like a field. Sorry, I'm plugging my computer. It's not even necessarily like a field. What I've seen like a team perspective. I guess I can answer that second. But the biggest thing is what we just saw happen with Matthew Sluka at UNLV, and you got a 3-0 team who a lot of people now have projected as the 12th seed in the playoffs. The starting quarterback, says, "Hey, I didn't get the money that I was told. I'm out," and so. I think they had another player who now says it didn't have anything to do with the NIL do that on their team as well, one of their running backs. And then you just saw Bear Alexander, the defensive tackle for USC, previous 5-star from Georgia, just do the same thing. So I think that honestly, unfortunately, may be opening a can of you see that a lot more often. And, you talk about changing the dynamic of a team and week to week, how altered that can change lines and the outlook of what your team can achieve in the season. It's pretty drastic. So, I'm intrigued to see moving forward what parameters they put on that or what that looks like. But I think that, kind of shocked me. We've obviously never seen that or anything like that. So I'm excited to see kind of where they take that, the whole NIL ordeal, and take that moving forward.
Yeah, I was really surprised when all that came out, and all I said is you need to show your work, and you have stuff written out then
Yeah,
or
right.
whatever. And you just have to kind of wonder if there was a coach or a support staffer that was just getting a little fast, a little loose with, oh yeah, you're worth 100 G's.
Yep.
And when things were taken out of context, I don't know. They always talk about three sides to every story. I'm waiting to see the third side to this
Yeah.
one because it's nuts, because we're not that far removed from players certainly sitting out in meaningless exhibition bowl games. You're not in the
Of course.
playoff or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
I'm just not going to do this. To now we're to a point of where, as you said, I mean, UNLV 3-0, in the hot or in the good seat right now for maybe picking up that number 12 spot in the playoffs. And it's like, you gave me $3,000 for moving expenses. I was promised 100,000, and it's problem. I mean, and I don't think that the House case that they're still trying to push it across the goal line is going to help in these types of instances. So
Agreed.
I don't until NIL is brought completely in house and that you have actual, just a ledger of what
Yeah.
everything is. I don't know how you get away from that.
Yeah. 100%. It's an interesting time. And honestly, everybody loves to say, and I don't know what my take is. They love to say, well, he quit on his team and those type of takes. But, if we were in his shoes and he could sit out and then go get $200,000 next year, I mean, that's life-changing money for a lot of people. And so you also have to look at it from his side. And I think it was Peter Burns tweet that, but was just talking about like, it's easy to point fingers and say, he quit on his team. And I don't think that was the right thing to do. But at the same time, he's done enough to get them to 3-0 next year. And if he can go make 150, 200,000 next year on a signed contract, I mean, that's something that, we're not in those shoes, so we can't answer, but I can see where he's coming from of, he's making it a business decision that what can help him start and get his life, going post football.
If anybody would like to super chat us $100,000 or even $3,000, feel free to super chat us here on the show. Is Tennessee for real this year?
I've got asked that question several times by offense. I think they are. I think they're a really good football team. I think the biggest difference between this and was it the 22 year went with Hendon Hooker. I think their defense is really strong. I think the front seven's elite. My biggest hesitation with Tennessee, and I think he's a great player, but it's tough for me to buy that a first year starting quarterback can take his team to win the national championship when you look at the plethora of guys with big time games, big time wins, and you pretty much outside of Tennessee look at every top 10, top 15 team. they all have multiple years starting quarterbacks who have played in those games, been in that spotlight, you know, been in the games where, you know, you got to go take them on a minute 30 drive to go win the game. And they've been able to do that and been there. So that would be my one hesitation. I think they're plenty talented enough. They have a really good running back, Dylan Sampson, who I think carries that load a lot. But I'm interested to see how it shakes out. You know, I've had some family members and some friends, you know, a lot of the projections potentially have, you know, Tennessee playing somebody in that round one, and then whoever wins that going to play OSU. And I've had some interesting conversations there, and yeah, intrigued to see, you know, if that is the case, how that shakes out and how many family members talk to me that week. But we'll get there if that time arises.
Well, we'll definitely make sure that if that matchup happens, we're going live and doing another show. I promise you that, because that will be fun, because there's nothing like family
Oh yeah.
trying to get up in the way of your big investment.
Yeah, right. I know that'd be an interesting sight to see. But I mean, I think it's a realistic, you know, spot. I think Tennessee does make the college football playoffs, and you know, we'll see how that kind of shakes out with the bracket and those type of things. But yeah, should be interesting.
A question I always like to ask: we're here at the end of September. We do have one more football game before the end of September, but we always want to anoint somebody as the September Heisman. You know, you are controlling the narrative, and very often is your September Heisman your actual December Heisman. But who is your September Heisman? And I'll try to think of who mine is.
Yeah, I have two answers for that. My first answer is, like, from the voting perspective, who I think would actually win it today, and that would be Cam Ward, rightfully so. I think he's been great. What he went to the swamp and did, and his poise in the pocket, I think was incredible. His numbers back it up. But I will say, and I think the best player in college football, and something we've never seen, is arguably Travis Hunter. I mean, what? And I'm not I don't really love all their antics and everything they do, but playing 100 snaps a game and being elite on both sides of the ball, you know, through the PFF grading system and all those things. And I mean, he's been great at receiver, but he's also been really good in coverage and all those things. And we've just never seen someone be able to do that. And I know, you know, he's not playing in the SEC and those type of things, but to be able to go 100 snaps a game in the physicality of football is tip my cap. And he's been elite on both sides of it. So I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. I just think he's arguably the best player in college football because he is so dynamic on both sides.
I agree with everything you said there. I mean, I think that Cam Ward is much more, I think he's mentioned as a September Heisman. I think he's somebody that has the staying power to be there come December. I'm not as sure about Travis Hunter, but I think he's had a tremendous first month of the season. You kind of wonder what would happen if he were in a program that wasn't constantly fighting itself. It feels like Colorado is on the interstate going 65 miles an hour with its parking brake on. It's constantly fighting itself, and just, I mean, just can't get it sorted out. But what he's doing there, I mean, I go back to, for Ohio State, a name in Chris Gamble, who played both ways. I mean, we're getting back there a little bit to the Chris Gamble era, but you know, it's something to be said. But you know, I'll make an argument too that Colorado absolutely needs them to play both ways, because they turn over their roster every single year under Dion. I mean, we're not talking like Ohio State going out and getting 7 in the portal. I mean, we're talking about going out and getting 57 in the portal. Yeah,
literally. Yeah, a totally new team. So, you know, like you said, I mean, especially down the stretch here with conference play starting, those will likely get shaken up. I'm still riding with Jackson Dart as the winner in December, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I guess if I had to think about, you know, who I think is going to get there, and again, I as I said, I have some futures. I don't have any Heisman futures going on right now. I mean, Cam Ward, I think, is going to be there. He's going to be in New York because Miami doesn't really play anybody. So, you know, they played their hard part of their schedule. The Canes have. So I think that he'll continue to put up big numbers as long as Mario Cristobal doesn't get in his head too much or whatever. I think Jackson Dart is an interesting bet there. I mean, certainly there's going to be a lot of push for Carson Beck. I
Yeah.
think at Tennessee, I think Nico, the quarterback, is going to be somebody who gets mentioned as well. I think it's pretty wide open right now,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the legitimate Heisman race and not the faux September race, I think that there are a lot of guys because most people haven't played anybody yet.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that you do have some occasional crossover games that are decent, but you know, people might want to sit there and say, what about Quinshon Judkins for Ohio State? Well, let me see them go against Iowa. Let me see them go against Oregon before I'm going to say anything.
Yep. Yeah. It'll be intriguing to see, you know, like I've mentioned a couple times here, but we're really about to get into the heart of it where you're going to understand a lot of the team's identities. Like you said, there's been a couple marquee matchups, but you know, week in, week out conference play is where you really see what teams are made of.
Mega MC3, Dion is running that kid into the ground. He wouldn't do anything close to what he's doing now if he were in the Big Ten or the SEC. I mean, obviously there is something to be said about what's happening and who you're going against, and
for sure,
are your Jimmys and Joes better than our Jimmys and Joes and everything else? I mean, I think talent is talent, and I think Travis Hunter would still resonate wherever he was. But I think that if he were on a upper echelon Big Ten or SEC roster, I think there might be the concern that he might be more of a novelty on playing in the opposite side of the ball than what he is playing on the main side of the ball. And you know, I enjoy a good novelty every now and then, but I also recognize that the reason that he's doing it is because Colorado is just not good enough across the board too.
For sure. And I was just thinking, you know, like just playing both sides or the special teams. I would love to get your take on, and we hadn't even talked about this, but the Caleb Downs, you know, they've hinted at him playing running back, obviously not necessarily needed, that we've seen it all. But also, you know, he started as the punt returner last year for Alabama as a true freshman. And I know Brandon Inniss,
Brandon.
you know, obviously had the muff, and I was curious your thoughts on him getting involved in the return game, or if you think, you know, he's pretty. I know offense, there's been some talk. I don't think that's going to happen. So if you think that we see him involved in special teams at some point through the year.
I really would not be in favor, if I'm a coach, to put one of my best players out there in a position of where they're just taking extra hits, because it's just dumb stuff happens in, you know, you're running full go down the field to go do this, and non-contact injury happens or whatever. I don't particularly like that. I don't think that you're going to win a Heisman for Caleb Downs by having him return punts or anything else like that. I think that the downside is way too high. As for Inniss, that his muff, he was looking directly into the sun. Still not good enough. You can't do that. I think Inniss is going to take one to the house. He'll be the first Ohio State player to return a punt since 2014. 10 years ago when Jalen Marshall did it.
That's wild.
I just lost my I cannot find the right size earbuds for these AirPods, so it fell right out of my ear.
10 years is wild.
10 years is wild, but I think you're also going to look at an instance too where he doesn't necessarily need to play running back, because I think James Peoples has stepped up so much as that number 3 running back. They lost TC Caffey, who was a walk-on preseason ACL injury, lost for the season. So I think at that point there is concern, because you don't know what you're going to get out of your true freshman, out of James Peoples, out of Sam Williams-Dixon. So you're only going in with 2 backs, and Trevion Henderson has had some injuries through his career. But you know, I think you put that running back stuff kind of in the, you know, off to the side. If you need to do it, you need to do it. And athlete going to athlete. But I would not put him out there in punt returns, short of being somebody that's like, you put your heels on the 8 and you catch it, and you catch it and you catch it, and that's it. I just don't want somebody to get hurt in that instance. I mean, yes, Malik Hartford, who is the next safety up, is really good. But he's not Caleb Downs. If he were Caleb Downs, he would be playing right now. So that's my view on it.
100%.
Well, we've been going for almost an hour here. I guess my last question, after each Ohio State win, on Sunday, do you go to your betting app and sit there and see what your cash out is moved to or whatever, or is it just like I have no intention to move on it right now. It is what it is, but I don't want to sit there and tempt myself by seeing this giant number.
Yeah. I like going to look at it. I was intrigued to see what the line. I was watching the Kentucky-Georgia game live, and the line was moving throughout the game, more on the national championship odds. And so that obviously is moving my bet, because as Ohio State gets moved, that number is swaying one way or the other. But even through the first 3 weeks, I mean, the cash outs went up $15,000, and I think we talked about that. And, who we really played yet. And we've moved in the right direction. $15,000. They're now the clear favorite on every betting site. So I'll continuously look at those lines, but I'm more intrigued to see like what 3 through 6 is doing, and who's kind of moving in those spots, and who does Vegas think, after the Georgia and the Ohio State, what that kind of shuffle looks like.
There you go. And I can assure you this won't be the last time we have Calvin on, as I think maybe after Oregon, or maybe even before Oregon, we've got to get to a point of where you're at a game, and that, I mean, I'm at all of them. That's my job. But that we can get together and really figure out something fun to do for everybody to watch here at wagerwire.com and at buckeyehuddle.com.
Yeah, I love that. Are you heading out to Eugene?
I will be. I'll be flying out on Thursday, flying home on Monday morning, because Friday to Sunday flights, I would need to basically hit a lottery ticket to be able to afford that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can imagine those were pretty expensive, but that should be I would love to go out there. That should be an unreal atmosphere.
Absolutely. But until next time, I want to thank Calvin for joining us, and I want to thank everybody out there for watching us here on Behind the Bet, here powered by wagerwire.com. Check us out at wagerwire.com. Download the app at your favorite app store, whether it's the Google Play or the Apple Store, and sync your bets. Track all of your action right there, one simple place. And you can buy and sell bets too, as WagerWire continues to dominate the space. So until next time, though, have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kevin.